WDTFX.
Once again, here is Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football with your hosts, Dustin Lunt and Jake Trowbridge.
Hey, welcome back to the Drinking and Talking Fantasy Football podcast, everyone. Happy Tuesday before Christmas, I guess we can say here, or your whatever winter holiday you're celebrating here. We shouldn't just say Christmas specifically, but
Festivus, for example.
Oh, Festivus, 2 days, December 23rd. We're coming up on it. Prepare to have your grievances aired. Feats of strength.
I have no feats of strength to offer. Not on this Festivus, nor any other day of the year. I want to get that out of the way.
Well, I'm sorry to hear that, Jake. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great. Let's not bury the lead here. You, for anybody watching, can see that Dustin's not in his normal recording space because you are on vacation.
That's right.
And I'm living vicariously through you right now, Dustin. Where are you at?
I am on the East Coast. I'm in Cocoa Beach, Florida right now. The wife has graciously allowed me to record the podcast while we are on vacation here. So it is 7:30 Eastern time. I had to do the math in my head for when we're going to actually record. So this is a little bit later than what I'm used to, even though my internal clock still says it's 6:30. But yeah, I am live on location recording here. So yeah, it's been great so far.
What a pro. What a pro you are to go away to an entirely different area.
For our listeners. I'm here for the listeners.
God, just slow clap for Dustin here. Listeners, you do it too. Do it along with me. Don't make me be the only one here because he deserves it. So I'm not doing as well as you are, I don't think, because I am not on vacation in a sunny Cocoa Beach-esque landscape. But I'm doing good. Now, we are recording this while two NFL games currently happen simultaneously on a Tuesday evening, which is fucking wild. So, what the hell, Dustin? What is going on?
I don't know. I don't know how I feel about this. I'll be honest. I know it was a whole big hubbub on Twitter, of course, but the NFL said that they were not going to postpone games if teams were having COVID issues or outbreaks or however you want to word it, is that they would have to forfeit the games. And that was set out in July when the NFL came out for this season's guidance. And now all of a sudden, because we're close to the playoffs for the NFL, and of course there's lots of money involved for the NFL and the players, they said, no, we'll postpone the games. You can play on Tuesday now when there's nothing else going on TV and we still have, all the watchers watching the game. So yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. I wish NFL would have just stuck to their guns and been like, well, sorry, can't help it. Your team isn't following protocols set forth by the league, and you have all these positive cases. They should have stuck to their guns and punished the teams, but obviously that's not a case. So how do you feel about it, Jake?
Well, I think as a business decision and as a viewing experience, I think it's a win-win. Like, of course, they get more money. They get more eyes on the product here, having two games on this Tuesday night that they wouldn't have otherwise had, of course. But for the players and the teams, it sucks. It totally sucks because there are teams playing right now who benefited from it and who got hurt by it because this delay actually had more time for their players to get added onto the COVID list that were not previously on the COVID list and wouldn't have been if they played on Sunday. So they tried to make it, fair, and I think ended up just kind of shanking a different team in the process.
Yeah, and not to mention that it's really going to screw over those teams that have to either play Saturday or Sunday. It's short. It's essentially like like a shortened week for them, and that's just not good for the players or player safety either, which their NFL seems to be so concerned about these days. So I don't know. It's a weird double message that they're sending there.
Imagine the NFL not being consistent with their messaging. That can't
Weird.
happen,
No.
right? This is a
No, they'll
first,
never do such a
if it
thing.
is. Yeah, I don't believe that this has ever occurred before. It's not the only weird thing about this week, even. Just speaking personally from a bunch of my fantasy teams that were in the playoffs, some of them not so lucky now because, good players were terrible, terrible players were good, and it was the upside down this week in fantasy football. I mean, I don't understand what happened to all of the good players this week.
I don't understand it either. And all I can say is if for some reason you were lucky enough to have your team on a bye for the playoffs this week, you fucking lucked out, because this week was just, like you said, it was totally the upside down. Just it was opposite week for NFL. You had players like Duke Johnson from 5 years ago all of a sudden coming out and putting up big games. And then, of course, injuries hit again. Chris Godwin out for the year now with torn ACL. I mean, it's just a shit show of a week.
Not cool, man. Not cool. And it does feel a little bit like you got rewarded this week for having kind of a bad team if you won. But that's just how fantasy football works. So, like, anybody griping about it, I mean, myself included to a certain extent, it's like you just got to suck it up and deal with it, because that's what fantasy football can be. And it's the charm of it in a way, miserable as it may be at times.
I'd say charm is not the word I would use, but it is a good descriptor, I suppose.
It's the evil of it, then. How about that? It's the witchcraft of it all.
Mm-hmm. But hopefully this next week gets better. As I said, we've got football on Saturday, which is great. We got football on Sunday, which is great. We got Monday, Thursday football. I mean, we've got all the days of football here over Christmas. So what's there not to love? Hopefully all the games go off without a hitch. Let's be honest here. Hopefully there's no more postponements or forfeited games, God forbid, because of COVID. So let's cross our fingers.
Yeah,
especially for our
I'm done with that. Yeah, I'm done with that. Can we just be over with that aspect of it? I am not done with the fantasy season, though, nor the football season. And I don't understand some folks who apparently are. It's been kind of a thing on Twitter lately, at least, where people are just like, I'm done. Like, folks are just straight up exhausted. And I understand it. But God damn it, we only get this 20 weeks out of the year. We got to relish, man.
Yeah, we've only got seriously a month left of football. If maybe slightly more than that, but yeah, we're closing in on the end here very quickly until all of a sudden we're in the dead zone of no NFL news. We're going to be talking about rookies ad nauseum for 2 months until the draft. I mean, we're getting to the dark period here, so yeah, let's enjoy it while we can.
Yeah, we're going to have to spend 3 months talking about, I don't know, fucking Keyshawn Vaughn again or something. That's going to be a thing that happens.
No, the thing that's going to happen is Le'Veon Bell coming through here in the fantasy playoffs. That's going to be a thing that we're all going to talk about.
Breaking news, breaking-ish news. Le'Veon Bell signed with the Bucs, so now, there's all that happening. The Killer Bees are back together. Antonio Brown, Le'Veon Bell paired up. Both of them are going to be incredibly, well, I shouldn't say both definitively. Antonio Brown will be incredibly fantasy relevant. And Absolutely. As you say, Bell absolutely could be, because why the hell not? That would be a thing.
But I think Brown's going to be the more prominent play this week, especially with Godwin being out. He instantly jumps up to at a minimum flex play this week.
Yeah. Would you play Antonio Brown over somebody like, let's say Brandon Ayuk?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty easy.
Yeah. I mean,
how about a guy who's
I say we saw what Brown did earlier this season. And yeah, he was kind of boomer bust, and it kind of depended on which player was involved of that three-headed wide receiver monster there. But now with Godwin out, and we see Tom loves Antonio Brown for some reason. So I think fire him up. I mean, he's all systems go this week. And if you're lucky enough to hold on to him after being out for all these weeks and with the injury and everything, you're going to be rewarded now here in the fantasy playoffs when it matters the most.
rewarded for hanging on to Antonio Brown. Can you imagine a world where we have to live through that? But it's the thing. Last question about Antonio Brown in a would you rather situation. Let's say Antonio Brown or Odell Beckham.
I don't know the matchups off the top of my head, but I would probably go with Antonio Brown. I just think he's almost foolproof this week. I hate to say it.
Well, he is a fool, so
there is that. No argument there.
Dustin, you're in an exotic quote unquote location, meaning different than Wisconsin. So anything is exotic compared to this place right now. But have you been drinking throughout this entire day? / what are you drinking now?
Well, yes, I have been drinking throughout the day. A lot of Florida localish beers, so that's been nice to experience something new that I've never had. But right now, I am drinking Boda Pinot Noir wine. As we move into the evening hours, you get into the wine. So, yes, that's what I'm drinking this evening. What are you drinking, Jake?
Not boxed wine. Nothing against boxed wine. You know, I'm just not a wine guy.
I know.
And Boda Box is even a classier version of boxed wine. So really, can't blame you in any regard there. I'm not drinking wine, though. I am drinking beer. There's a place called Delta Brewing in Madison here, which we both love. The missus has started working for them, and part of the benefit is she gets to bring home some samplies for me. So I am currently imbibing on their Goza, which is kind of a sour, but not quite a sour. It's great.
No, that's a good one. I like their Goza. I've had that before. That is delicious.
Yeah. I Goza crazy for it. Fuck me.
I'm just going to take Jake off the stream there. If you're going to make bad jokes like that, I'm going to remove you from the stream. Just
I don't blame you.
Moving forward, you're warned now.
Okay. I appreciate the stern but fair warning on that front. Well, Dustin, I hope you have a little bit something besides just wine. And if not, that's okay. We can make do. You'll just have to take an extra big gulp.
I'll make it up next week. How about that? I am not prepared for this. I'll be honest. I didn't look at the show sheet. Jake, you set up everything for the show this week, so I'm going in completely blind. The fact that I was able to get my microphone set up and everything here outside of my normal studio area was feat in and of itself. So yeah, I am unprepared to do my shot that I must take for the beer bet payout. As a reminder for all the folks out there, we had Herbert versus Mahomes. I had Herbert. Jake had Mahomes. As you probably already guessed, I did not win this. Again, very close matchup again for 2 weeks in a row. So Mahomes ended up with 30.6 points as the QB2 on the week, and Herbert a respectable 24.04 as the QB4. This is 2 weeks in a row now. We've had QBs that have finished very, very closely at the very top of the rankings for the week, or finishes, I should say, for the week. So I will pay this off next week and give you your credit on it. So let's just put a pin in this.
Done.
The shot will be coming next week. All right.
Consider it pinned, Dustin. But this is a hot streak for us. You know, a lot of times we go into the mud with some of these beer bets, and we try and find really gross matchups just because that can be fun too. But yeah, we've really hit on the quarterback battles. Of course, it's not like we're picking random quarterbacks out of the hat either. These are guys that we know will produce, but it's always interesting when they're this close. And it may be your turn to do a beer bet, or I don't know if it really matters at this point. So we'll have to see if another quarterback showdown pops up later on.
I think there could be. Just saying, I think there could be. Yeah.
Foreshadowing. That's what we call that in the biz. And I just have to throw this in there once again, Dustin, because our end of season or rest of season beer bet, I got to provide the people with an update. I'm sure they are just on pins and needles over this Cortland Sutton bet, man. You know, where you said in weeks 13 through the end of the fantasy season that he would score at least 11 points per game. Now we are at 3 weeks here, and his average went up a little bit from last week. It was at 2.7 per game. Now it is at a staunch 2.9 per game. So still rough. Still rough.
I don't like it.
Yeah. Yeah. Now Drew Lock could potentially start this week here for the Broncos. I haven't seen any updates on Teddy Bridgewater. I know there's an injury concern there. If Drew Lock starts, maybe you get a big game out of Sutton.
Maybe. I would need like a 60-point game at this point, though, to get that average up to over 11. So we'll see what happens. Cross my fingers.
Anything can happen. There's 2 weeks left here. There's so much space in front of you.
There's hope. Very little, but there is hope.
All right. Well, shall we take it into our fave segment?
Yeah, let's hit our drunk trade of the week.
Drunk, hammer, drunk.
Drunk trade of the week.
This week's comes in from Reddit user, Don't Make Me Audit Your Ass. I'm just going to take a stab in the dark that this is like an accountant type person, or maybe even works for the IRS. I don't know. That seems like a thing with that username. In any case, they submitted this drunk trade. The format here, it's redraft. It's half PPR. It's 1 quarterback league. They say, I traded Javonte Williams for Devonta Freeman. He's a Ravens fan here. At a Friendsgiving meal, a couple of glasses of wine deep. There you go. There's a fellow wine drinker for you, Dustin. My buddy and I were lamenting how nobody makes trades in our league. So we made that trade. I also ended up, here's a bonus trade, trading Melvin Gordon for Jalen Hurts that night as well. So I got rid of the Denver backfield due to mixing Cabernet, Merlot, turkey and stuffing. 10 out of 10 would do it again, they say. First of all, how you feel about mixing Cab and Merlot, Dustin? You're the wine expert.
That's fine. Whatever floats your boat when it comes to wine.
Okay. I didn't know if that was a recipe for disaster or headaches or something,
Yeah, probably, but, you always run that risk any alcohol you drink. So
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Now, I would like to bundle this together to get your opening opinion here. So the entire backfield, which I understand to some extent, like I don't like rostering the 1A and 1B in a backfield like that. I'm not a huge fan of that ever. So I get the impulse. But Williams and Gordon for Devonta Freeman and Jalen Hurts, 1 quarterback league. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I like that he got rid of the backfield. Yeah, I don't like drafting same players from the same backfield, especially when it's that close of a split, like we were kind of thinking it would be all season. I would have kept one or the other because both are playing extremely well right now. So at least for the rest of the season for redraft, I would have only kept one or the other. I probably wouldn't have traded both. I don't like the Javonte Williams for the Freeman trade. I just don't like it. I would have kept Williams. I don't mind the actual Hurts for Melvin Gordon. I know it's a 1 QB league. I would assume that he didn't have a lot of depth for his QB and needed to make the push here towards the end of the season. So I don't mind that at all. Even in a 1 QB league, I think that's pretty good value, especially since Melvin Gordon isn't taking the entire backfield. It's very much a 1A, 1B situation there. So, well, I like that he got out of the entire, one of the pieces of the backfield. I wouldn't have necessarily traded both because they are totally both very usable pieces.
Yes, and I think will be rest of season. Both of them should still have tremendous value. Does it change your opinion at all to know that since week 8, Devonta Freeman, and that would be like a week before this, if we're talking Friendsgiving,
right?
My quick math, I think, is about a week before this. But since then, he is the RB15 in half-point PPR, Devonta Freeman.
No. I feel like he's been buoyed by a couple of big weeks where he's been very touchdown dependent. Let's put it that way. And I know it's the Ravens offense and, we like the running game there, but I just don't know that would necessarily continue. I mean, this last week we saw it didn't do much with the Packers playing them. just from us, personally watching the game. So like he's very boom bust and very touchdown dependent. So that's why I don't like that.
Yeah, that's fair. Now, pending the Tuesday night games, Devonta Freeman is still RB23 on the week. So it's not that he wasn't usable this week, but part of this was also just because everybody was a little bad. And so if you are less bad, then by default, you're good. That's how that law
the math checks out.
Math works. But I agree with you. I would have, of course, liked to have the Javonte Williams side in that, but not. I don't think by as much as you. I'm actually comfortable with Devonta Freeman rest of season. I don't think he's going to be a stud, a league winner. Javonte Williams might be, but I think Devonta Freeman will be just fine. So I don't think this was awful. This wasn't egregious.
It's not awful, but it's just I'm not. I don't believe in Devonta Freeman. Let's put it that way.
That's fair.
Even rest of Freeman, I just don't believe it.
He's like 29 years old on his third team after having basically a year off. So, I get the worry there. All right. Now, Dustin, we buried the lead, I think, in this, and that's on me. See, what I wanted to do with this episode, now that we get into the meat of it, is I wanted to have a listener mailbag. I thought that would be fun. We spent all this time talking, and the only submissions we ever talk about are the drunk trades, which are wonderful, of course. Like, you know what? Let's open it up to more. All right. Don't we want more of that? Don't we love our listeners so much that we want them to participate even more with us? I threw it on Twitter that it was a mailbag episode. You know how many responses we got? We got 0 responses. Dustin.
Come on, listeners. You can do better than that.
I feel personally attacked by the lack of submissions that came in. So what I did
the only thing I'll say is perhaps because it's Thanksgiving, no, Christmas week, is that maybe everyone's a little preoccupied coming up to Christmas here, where they're doing the planning. Maybe they're traveling like myself, where they just didn't have time.
If you want to make excuses for them, then I suppose. Actually, no, I was just making an excuse for them before we came on air. I think most people are just kind of like done with fantasy football at this point. Like we talked about at the top of the episode. Some people just are like checked out. Yeah. They're out of the playoffs. They're like, fuck this. See you next year. And I get it. I understand.
Yeah.
So what I ended up doing instead was I said, I'm going to make a mailbag show. I'm going to force a mailbag show. By just combing through Twitter for anybody that asked an open question on Twitter about fantasy football or not fantasy football even. And we're going to answer those questions, whether they want us to or not. Because you know what? It's our show and they can't stop us, Dustin. We can do
That's right.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go through some of these. And I'm very curious because I've, of course, seen these. You haven't seen these yet. I'm very curious to see your answer on some of these. Of course, I'll provide mine as well. And if folks are out there and want to contribute into the group chat, feel free to do that as we are live streaming. But otherwise, we'll go to this list. So, Dustin, my first question for you. It comes in from Dolphins fan 954 on Twitter. RB1 for the rest of the year. Duke Johnson or Myles Gaskin? Now, they mean RB1 on the Dolphins team, I hope, because I personally don't have either of them as a true top 12 running back the rest of the year for fantasy. But if you had to pick, Myles Gaskin was kind of banged up coming in, or maybe coming off COVID, something like that. I don't know. But Duke Johnson was better last week. Do you expect Duke Johnson to be better the rest of the season? Dustin is frozen in fear. Or sultry anticipation. I never know with that guy. All of his faces look the same. He has so many of them. I am going to answer this one for me personally. I think that Duke Johnson showed us who Duke Johnson is for the first 5 years of being in the NFL, which is he can have utility. He can be serviceable for fantasy purposes. But he's never going to be like a workhorse type of guy. I don't suspect. Can he catch a ball? You sure bet he can. And with Will Fuller being out for the rest of the season, with his broken fingy, which has lasted like 18 times longer than anybody else's broken fingy in the history of the NFL. Maybe he's forced to catch more passes, but Myles Gaskin isn't like a slouch in that respect either. I don't want either of these guys. I understand if you had to pick up Duke Johnson and now you feel real smart about it. I just, My answer to this is, listeners, Dustin bailed. I think he's having an internet difficulty there. So we're not going to get his answer on this one just yet. But when he pops back in here very shortly, then we will follow up. In the meantime, I am going to talk about one other question that is, I'm getting it out of the way because we broke the news up top that Le'Veon Bell signed with the Bucs. So now the thought is, well, what do you do with those guys that you thought had fantasy relevance since Leonard Fournette is out? You know, Ronald Jones, people got excited about him for half of a minute and not a minute more. But this question comes from @JWall_FF says, is Ronald Jones the top waiver pickup, or will Keyshawn Vaughn lower his upside? Well, Keyshawn Vaughn ain't doing shit. But Le'Veon Bell, as we talked about, does limit his upside. There's a very real chance, because it's the Bucs and they're obsessed with old people, that he ends up being like the guy, and then Ronald Jones doesn't do anything. You know, Dustin's back in. Yay, Dustin. He's switched, listeners. He switched from the desktop version of Dustin to the cell phone version of Dustin.
Got to keep the show going.
Again, this fucking guy is unstoppable. Can't stop, won't stop. Dustin, I was rambling about a couple of things, but I'm going to throw it back to you. For Duke Johnson or Myles Gaskin for Miami, if you had to pick one, who would it be rest of the season?
As much as I hate to say it, probably Duke Johnson, just because they haven't seemed to trust Myles Gaskin all season long. So I don't know why we should start to trust him now.
Yeah, that's what I even went further and I said, he's been this way for 5 years. Why all of a sudden, unless he's Cordero Patterson, is Duke Johnson all of a sudden going to get this? And I don't think it's the case.
Exactly.
So the other one I was just recapping really briefly, and just a quick one here because we talked about it up top, but is Ronald Jones the top waiver pickup this week, or will Keyshawn Vaughn / Le'Veon Bell now lower his upside?
God, I would probably say Keyshawn Vaughn. I hate to say it. I know. I don't like it either. Help it.
Can you have a technical difficulty again? Because that is oh my God. As I say this, by the way, he legitimately has a technical difficulty, and then exited just as swift. I was just kidding, Dustin. God, you're so sensitive about Keyshawn Vaughn. No, I cannot believe Keyshawn Vaughn is a thing. Dustin's back. Dustin, I was just making a joke about you having a technical difficulty to get you out of here after that Keyshawn Vaughn business. But you did.
I know, it's awful.
You took it a step too far, dare I say.
Can't help
it. Okay, Florida Dustin. This was posted from the Dynasty Nerds Twitter account. So, not quite a listener mailbag here probably. But true or false, Elijah Mitchell, running back for the San Francisco 49ers, is a top 20 dynasty running back.
Ooh.
Right?
I want to say true. I think it'll be close. I mean, when he's been healthy this year, the Niners have run him and used him as the bell cow running back. I know all the other running backs have been injured on their team, with Jermichael Hasty and Trey Sermon and Jeff Wilson. Like, the whole gamut of them all been injured, of course, because that's all San Francisco running backs do. But I don't know. Kyle Shanahan's kind of coach, kind of like Pete Carroll, where it's draft capital be damned, I'm going to put the best player out on the team that helps us. And right now, that's Elijah Mitchell. And I don't see that changing for this, at least for this next season.
That's interesting because, I'm of the mindset, like, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me 8 times in a row, shame on me. So I will not be fooled by the San Francisco backfield anymore. It's like a whole Raheem Mostert thing I have trust issues. It's just like every year, and a lot of it is due to injuries, to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
But every year prior, it was Jeff Wilson was like the hot commodity, and then it was Raheem Mostert, and now it's Elijah Mitchell. And I know Trey Sermon isn't anybody's like cup of tea right now, but there's always a chance that, like, wow, he impressed a whole lot in the offseason. So now Trey Sermon's the guy. And it makes it hard. It's hard.
It does, but as it stands right now, today, I'm going to say yes.
All right. Would you inch him into your top 15?
No, I couldn't go that far. I mean, there's too many good running backs in the league. Even thinking of the guys that are injured, like Dobbins and Akers. I mean, there's just too many good running backs to put him in the top 15. Top 20 might even be pushing it, but I could see him being right about that level.
That's fair. And one thing to consider with dynasty running backs is, like, what's the shelf life anyways? Even for the really top guys, you get maybe 5 years out of them at their sort of peak value. And that's sometimes hard to get even 5 years. So here's a fun one, Justin, fellow Packer fan that we get to marinate in here for a second. Comes from @GabGowdy on Twitter. What are your expectations for this Browns-Packers Christmas game? A nice open-ended question.
Packer smash.
Ooh. In what way? Like, what if you had to predict a score for this game? Assuming Baker Mayfield is back and playing, and everybody else.
It'd probably be like 28-17. I think they win pretty handedly. The Packers are on a roll right now. Browns are coming off all the COVID outs for their team. It's just a recipe. It's a short week for the Browns as well, playing last night on Monday night, turning around play on a Saturday. It's just a recipe for disaster for the Browns. And it's really nothing against the Browns in particular. It's just a lot of unfortunate events for them. And they're running into a buzzsaw of the Packers right now that are vying for that number 1 seed in the first round bye in the playoffs.
Yeah. They are Lemony Snicket, and this is an unfortunate series of events for the Browns. And like, I don't want to chortle about this because there's any given Sunday, Saturday,
that's right,
whatever, all that, but gross. I would like a 2-touchdown victory here, and one that we can hang on to the bitter end instead of almost losing magically in the fourth quarter, like with the Ravens game. One thing to note about that, MVS is on the COVID list as of right now. Not sure if he will be back in time for Saturday. So that's something to monitor, and not great, not ideal. But I think even without MVS, would your score stay the same?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So you don't really like MVS. That's what I'm hearing.
No, I like MVS. I just don't think he's not a make or break player for our team.
He doesn't make the world turn for you.
That's right.
All right. That's fair. Now let's branch out a little further. This one comes from Chase Vernon, a friend of the show, has been on the podcast, @FF_intervention. Who is making the playoffs? Let's start with the NFC. Who's making the playoffs for the NFC? You don't have to throw out the entire bracket here, but let's disregard the Packers for ourselves because we know they have locked up a spot. So even if we weren't homers, you can't say that they won't get into the playoffs. You're not allowed because math says that they're in, goddammit. But outside of them, there's, of course, the top 2 right after them. Well, top 3, I guess. So there's the Cowboys, there's the Bucks, and then there's the Cardinals. Are all 3 of those shoo-ins in your opinion?
They should make it. Yes, they should. Although the Cardinals, the Rams are right on their heels. So,
that could be something that gets decided here these last couple weeks of the season. But I'm assuming the Cardinals will make it. They've been playing well all season. They've just had a couple hiccups here. But yeah, so we got those 4 teams for sure.
And then if we're looking next up here, we've of course got the Rams who are playing currently against the Seahawks. So we don't know the result of that game, but they're sitting at 9-4 right now. Which
I would think the Rams will probably make it.
Okay, so now this is where it gets interesting. So let's just have you throw out one more team here, because we've got the 49ers sitting at 8-6, also in the NFC West. So hypothetically, 3 teams could sneak in from there.
Mm-hmm.
We've also got the Vikings at 7-7 now, because they did unfortunately beat the Bears on Monday Night Football. So we didn't get the spoiler from them. Or there's also the Saints at 7-7. So those 3 teams, Niners, Vikings, Saints, if you had to pick one.
Niners.
Mm-hmm. Is this because of your love affair with Deebo Samuel?
No, I just think if my memory serves me correct, the Saints have a couple tough weeks to end the season here. And I just don't trust the Vikings to pull off a handful of victories to get in. I'll just be honest. So by default, it's just the Niners.
Yeah. Well, no better way to determine that than by default. I feel like in this particular situation.
What about you, Jay?
I actually am a little bit nervous for the Vikings, because I think, obviously they've been playing without Adam Thielen the last couple of weeks here.
Mm-hmm.
And it does seem like they've always lost by like a score, if that. It's been like by like 2 or 3 points. A lot of these games have been very close for them. So it feels like they should even be a little bit better than 7-7 right now. So I would throw my hat towards the Vikings. I don't want it because I would hate, to see a division rival prosper in any way, but it could happen. Now, let's talk AFC real quick here. So Let's say again, now the AFC is actually less obvious up at the top. It's a little bit murkier because we've really only got one double-digit win team on here, which is the Chiefs. And I think we can both agree, yes, Chiefs will get in.
They should.
But aside from that, it's pretty goddamn open. So let me list the 9-5 teams. We got the Patriots at the top of their division, and then we've got the Titans at the top of theirs. So both of those shoe-ins.
The Patriots, yes. The Titans, they should make it, but Indianapolis is right on their heels, and Indy is playing good ball where the Titans are kind of struggling right now. So that one's not quite so definite for me.
Yeah, and it's been a downhill slide because when your team loses fucking Derrick Henry, that'll happen to you. Like you've lost
AJ
your
Brown
and
Julio Jones. I mean, they've been decimated by injuries.
So the argument could be, well, if AJ Brown and Julio Jones actually come back and perform, then they could look a lot better than what we've seen, and they've kind of been, clinging on for hope.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would actually think the Colts have a better shot of making the playoffs than they do.
Yep.
But then, so Bengals and Ravens are tied in the North, in the AFC North. Both have 8-6 records. If you had to pick one of them to make it through, or you could say both. Do you think both make it through? I mean, one has to, but
one has to. I want to say the Bengals, just because I don't know. I just want to root for the Bengals. They've been bad for so long. I do. They've been bad for so long. I want to see them have a good season.
You want to root for Joe Mixon? Is that what I'm hearing? That's the only thing I heard of.
No. I did not say that. Joe Burrow, sure.
All right.
Chase, Higgins, Boyd, Uzama.
Uzama.
A lot of players we can root for other than Mixon on that team.
Potential Super Bowl MVP CJ Uzama. You heard it here first from me. I want Lamar to get a deep run into the playoffs. I just feel like people have talked so much shit about him, and like not being able to live up to being a true franchise, quarterback and all that shit. And because he, to their credit, I guess, with that argument, he hasn't really sustained any playoff longevity. So,
No.
but I think he definitely can. So I would like to see that happen. I actually think both could do it for sure. Same with the Chargers.
Mm-hmm.
Chargers are just under the Chiefs in that division. I think the Chargers have a good shot as anybody of actually making it to the Super Bowl in the AFC.
Yeah, very true.
Getting hot at the right time. All right. That's enough of that. That's enough of that particular prognostication. But also, listeners, send in who you think will make the playoffs. This is your chance to make up for not sending us questions here. This one comes from Scott Fish, the lovely Scott Fish, who is just, he's a dreamboat. Let's be honest. Also the nicest guy on Twitter in the industry. He asked.
True story.
So this is elaborating. So I guess this was kind of a lie when I said, let's stop this prognosticating. Which 7-7 or worse NFL team do you think can make a run and win the Super Bowl? So let me list off the 7-7 teams. If you want to go less than that, you can. But I think this is probably my threshold. We've got Dolphins, Browns, Washington, Eagles, Vikings, we mentioned, Raiders, Broncos, Saints, we mentioned. Any team out there, because you weren't a fan of the Saints and the Vikings, but anybody in this realm that you think can do it?
No.
No, not even a chance.
No. I don't think so. I mean, I was going to say Philly, but I don't see that.
You don't think they have the eye of the tiger?
No.
To make it happen?
No.
It's a Rocky reference, by the way. Philly listeners should appreciate that.
Yeah, I don't see any of those teams being able to. Every one of them has a major hole, and I don't know that the other part of their team could make up for it.
Yeah. Like the Dolphins is the first one that I really wanted to make a case for because I like Tua a lot. I like Tua Tagovailoa, and it's just like he kind of deserves to eke his way into the playoffs, which I think they could do. But
if I had to pick one team, it might be them, just because their defense is solid. Even though they haven't played quite as good as last year, but their defense is solid and their offense is starting to come around here. So it's like, yeah, they could. All the pieces fall the right way, but do I see it? No.
Yeah, that's fair. I'd like the idea here, Scott. I very much like the idea. I don't know that I could fully get on board with any, but I do think potentially, if they were to play spoiler, the Vikings could get into the playoffs and wreak a little bit of havoc. So I guess I will keep them in there with the Dolphins, but I can't imagine any of these teams in the Super Bowl right now. So right. I'm going to cut it shy there, I think. Let's shift away from all that officially now. No psych out this time. If we are, this comes from the FF Sandman on Twitter. Are there any rational arguments, Dustin, for why Justin Jefferson should not be the dynasty wide receiver one? Is there anybody out there? No, you can't imagine anybody else taking that range.
No, you said, is there a rational argument of why he shouldn't be? I mean, there's probably half a dozen guys that could be considered as the dynasty wide receiver one.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's just no good reason why I can't say he shouldn't be. I mean, you've got CD, you've got Chase, you've got Jefferson, you've got AJ Brown. I mean, I'm sure I'm missing a couple of guys. I mean, if you wanted to put, I don't know if you could put Waddle quite up there. You still have Tyreek Hill, who's doing Tyreek Hill things, even though he's a little bit older.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's any number of guys, but there's no reason why you can't say he shouldn't be, or in the conversation at least.
Well, yeah, I don't think anybody with a straight face could say he's not in the conversation. Like, I can't imagine a person ranking him outside of their top 5
Right.
receivers and being, earnest about that, because
Mhm.
that would just be insane to me. Here, you mentioned a couple of the names already. Now, I took a peek at the comments on this particular tweet, by the way, to see what other folks had answered. And there were some pretty, let's say, interesting ones, to be
Well, I'm
nice
sure.
about it. Like, folks were saying Devontae Adams. It's like, I get Devontae Adams is amazing and he's great and he's Aaron Rodgers' favorite target and he's just a big boy. He's a man in the NFL and he's wonderful. Devontae, I love you, but he's also older
Is he
by
28?
so like 5 years. He's got 4 or 5 years on Justin Jefferson. In Dynasty, that's huge for wide receivers. We
And
talk
we don't
about,
know who his quarterback is going to be next year either.
to be fair, we don't know that about Justin Jefferson either. Or I have reason to believe that they could move on from
True.
Kirk Cousins.
They
maybe.
could. They could.
But I also try not to fixate too much on the quarterback situation for wide receivers for a dynasty, just because it can become a headache, and going down that road is madness
Mhm.
sometimes. But hypothetically, hear me out. Is there any way you can get Jamar Chase to be that number 1 guy? I know he came on super strong to start this year. He's really fizzled lately, but like that start, I don't think was a fluke. So
Mhm.
if there's a case for a guy to be above him, I think Jamar Chase still might have it.
He could be. I mean, it's splitting hairs. It really has.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, CeeDee Lamb, these guys are all super fucking talented. So like this is why the tiers thing instead of the outright rankings thing is so much better.
Yeah.
Not even just for draft day. Like Dynasty is great.
Yeah.
Just put them all fucking together and then try and trade for as many of them as possible to get them
Exactly.
on your team. Which, by the way, AJ Brown, great trade target now because you threw his name out there and he's been out of sight, out of mind.
Which I did just acquire him, so that's great.
In that trade that I don't love. Do you want to recap that trade for? Not that I don't love it. I just mean I like the other side a little better. Do you want to recap it?
Sure. So I made a trade with Tyler Gunther of the I'm totally blanking. Dynasty Happy Hour. Thank you. So in their listener league, it's a 14-team Superflex tight end premium league. So we made a big boy trade this weekend. So I acquired from him AJ Brown, DeAndre Swift, and TJ Hawkinson. I gave up Saquon Barkley, Michael Gallup, Brandon Cooks, and Kyle Pitts. Context is he has the second best record in the league. He's going for the championship. My team is out of the playoffs with at least half a dozen guys on IR. So, I mean, my team was just decimated by injuries this year. Saquon was hurt for a good chunk of the season. So my team was out of it. It was a trade to help him for this year, trade to help my team moving forward. I got a little bit younger in most of the positions. And I thought it was a fairly even trade overall.
I agree that it was an even trade overall with all of the pieces except for tight end. That's where I got lost in it because I like Kyle Pitts a lot more than I like TJ Hawkinson. And this is tight end premium, so it accounts for more. That gap widens for me a little bit. I think everything else was equal except for those two guys.
It does, but as the person that's had Kyle Pitts on a couple of teams this year, one in redraft, one in Dynasty, which I just traded him away. Mm-hmm. I don't know what's going on with that team in Atlanta. It's just been a shit show this entire season. We don't know what's going to happen moving forward. Well, yes, Kyle Pitts is an amazing specimen of a human being and has all the talent in the world. How many times have we seen that? And we've been waiting for the next Travis Kelce to come along to be this next great tight end, and it just hasn't happened. And I'm not saying he can't be, and I'm not saying he won't be. Mm-hmm. and he's having a very good rookie season. Not to discount anything he's been doing. I just
Not
don't.
very good. He is on pace to have the greatest rookie season of a tight end of all time, is what I want to throw out there. Is because I think personally, and this is why we have such a divide, but this is also why trades like this are great to happen. Because obviously both of you guys were very happy with the trade. I presume Tyler is.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Because I know Pitts was his guy too, and he's been trying to get him off you for quite
All
some time
season.
there. So
Yeah, all
he was
season long.
excited about that, I'm sure. But it is a situation where I feel like he almost had worst case scenario, because like Matt Ryan was not throwing to him in the red zone. I don't know what the deal with Matt Ryan was there, but he's not going to be there forever. In fact, I know his contract's really weird for next year, so he's probably stuck there next year. But after that, I imagine things really open up for him. That'll be his third year.
Is it going to get better though?
I think so.
With the QB situation?
Yeah, even if it's a bad quarterbacks can hyper target their tight ends.
They
but
can.
Matt Ryan, for whatever reason, has that aversion.
Either.
No, there's not a guarantee. But if there's any semblance of smarts there, I would imagine he remains one of their top players on Atlanta overall, and you have to hyper target your best players. At least I would think. As all of my experience as an NFL quarterback teaches me, is you always throw to your best players.
Yes.
No, but I like that you're shaking shit up for sure. And that's why I said, the AJ Brown thing, I think that is a great guy to trade for. So I'm glad that you got AJ Brown for sure. And I do like John Swift.
Yeah, and you know what? This was actually a counter offer by me. The original offer had Calvin Ridley in there instead of AJ Brown. And as much as I love Calvin Ridley, and if Calvin Ridley was healthy and playing this year, I would have accepted that without a counter offer, because the counter offer did not have Brandon Cooks in it either. So it was just a 3-for-3 trade. But with the unknown with Calvin Ridley, I just wasn't comfortable with that.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah. So I countered with AJ Brown, and I just had to, give a little extra to get that done. So, which fair. I'm excited to have AJ Brown on my team. I have not any shares of him, so that makes me happy to have him as well.
And that's what matters in the long run.
That's right.
Hey, let's talk about another injured wide receiver real quick. One more from Chase here. It says, if you got offered a 2022 first for Chris Godwin, who, as you just mentioned, is going to be out for the rest of the season here, are you taking that? So you get offered the first to ship away Godwin. You moving him for that?
It's really team dependent. My initial thought was, no, I'm not going to do that because he's worth more than a single first. But he's probably going to be leaving the Bucs after this season. We probably won't see him until the playoffs next year, until after the fantasy season, just with how the ACL injury occurred so late in this season. So, I mean, we're basically going to go an entire another fantasy season without seeing him. So initially I was like, no, that's not enough. But at this point, it's like he's going to be 2 years older, probably on a different team. We don't know if it's going to be a better situation or not at this point. So it's like, depending on what your team is and what your needs are, it's not outrageous. I would probably try to get like a second thrown on at a minimum. But yeah, it's totally team dependent. I could see getting rid of him for just a single first if I had to.
I mean, yes, if I was trying to get this done, I would actually ask them to throw in like a Michael Gallup-esque player into this mix, because I like the uncertainty of Michael Gallup, actually, with him probably not being with the Cowboys and maybe being atop of a depth chart somewhere. Even if it's someplace like Detroit, I'm fine with that. But I think I would actually do it for a first. Here's my rationale. You tell me if you believe or agree with this, I guess. But like, you said it could be a year before we see Godwin again. In the meantime, you'll get a first-round draft pick for this upcoming draft. My thought is, I'll take that pick now, and maybe on draft day, I go ahead and try and move that pick. And I could probably get something at least equal to Chris Godwin on that day, I think. or you can wait a little bit, or you can do both, and you can wait until it's closer to Chris Godwin's return and then float out another trade to that guy and say, hey, I don't know, people get disenchanted because this guy is not on their team. They're not in their lineup. And maybe you can get him back cheaper. I like to play those games, but that it can also be a dangerous thing. So,
very true.
Yeah. All right. Let's end with a couple here. That I don't want to cut into your vacation any longer here, Dustin. You've been wonderful to grace us with your presence, so I don't want to keep you longer. But biggest takeaway from this week of fantasy football, with how goddamn weird and wild it's been. Any key takeaways spring to mind?
Pray for health. Just pray for health. That's the biggest thing. And the fact that you just have to embrace the variance of fantasy football. You had lineups that 5 years ago would have been fantasy lineups that were producing for you that shouldn't have been producing this week. It's just embrace the variance, enjoy the wild ride, because that's about all you can do at this point. If you're in the playoffs, just hope for the best. If you're out of the playoffs, again, just enjoy this wild ride that we're having and seeing everybody else tilt over their fantasy teams.
I agree. You know what I want to do real quick is give ourselves a pat on the back. Because the first thing I thought of when I saw this question was, remember a couple of weeks ago on this very podcast, we talked about how folks were actively maybe trying to tank to get like a better draft pick, even though they were on the cusp of getting into the playoffs. They're like, my team's not great enough to win the fantasy playoffs, so I'm just going to tank and hope for a better draft pick. This is why when you have the chance to get into the playoffs, you do what you can to get into the playoffs.
That's right.
Stuff like this can happen, and it happens all the time, and all you have to do is get in and then have some weird shit like this fall your way, and you could be looking at a championship. So
that's right.
Let that lesson sink in, folks. All right, last question here. Non-fantasy related, because this one is fun. What's your favorite Will Smith movie, Dustin?
Oof, it's a good question. There's
a lot of good ones out there.
I'm probably going to say Independence Day.
That's exactly what came to mind. I saw this question and I thought, welcome to Earth, right in my head as I read it out loud. It's like, I don't think
either that or Men in Black. The first one is a very close second for me. I do enjoy that movie a lot as well.
That's fair. Enemy of the State is a guilty pleasure for me.
Ooh, that's a good one.
And it has a cavalcade of like famous people in it at the time. I haven't
seen that for quite a while. That is a good movie.
It's a great movie. One, it has not Dennis Hopper.
Is it Gene Hackman?
Gene Hackman. There you go. Yeah, it has Gene Hackman in it. It also has like every semi-famous like comedic actor from the era making an appearance in there. Like Seth Green is in there. Jack Black is in there. Jamie Kennedy. Like all these. It's a delightful semi-serious romp, thriller. I don't know. Whatever the hell you call it. So that's my second nomination. All right, Dustin, let's get this wrapped up and get you out of here. Start of the week. You want to recap last week?
Yeah. So last week you had Jimmy G versus Atlanta. Finished as QB 10 with 13.8 points. So QB 1. So nice call there, Jake.
Nice.
And mine, unfortunately, was Devonta Freeman versus Washington, which that game was delayed. They are currently playing right now. And I haven't had a chance to pull up the stats to see where he's at right now. So, Jake, maybe you're doing that as we speak.
I did. So, Devonta Smith, not Devonta Freeman, but he's playing Washington. 2 receptions for 33 yards. We're only like a quarter and a half in, I believe. So, still plenty of opportunity there.
Yep. So, TBD. We can recap this next week. We'll just put a pin in that again with the beer bet from this week as well. We'll just recap both of those. So, who's your start of the week for this next week?
This week, I'm going back to the well that I started on last week before I had to pivot at the last second because there was that Myles Gaskin thing, and that's who I had listed initially. And then you brought up kindly that we didn't actually know if he was going to play.
Yeah.
He did end up playing, but it was the Duke Johnson show, weirdly enough, last week. But I am going back to the running back who's going to play against the Jets this week. It's James Robinson. So one, the specter of Urban Meyer is gone. Everybody in that team gets to breathe a little more freely. You know, they get to actually try and win a game. So I'm excited for that. And the Jets are the absolute bottom of the barrel against running backs for fantasy. So it's a match made in heaven. How about you?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm going back to a player I've had before as my start of the week. And that's Darnell Mooney. He showed up again last night, had a good week. Basically, with the exception of the week I called out for him to be my start of the week, he's been playing very well. I'm going to go back. He's got a really good matchup this week going against the Seahawks. So, yeah, fire it up.
Are you concerned that you just jinxed him again by listing him as your start of the week?
Not even a little.
Okay, good. Glad to hear that confidence. All right. Do you happen to have a beer bet that you would like to make this week?
To have a beer bet for this week. Let's see here. I thought I had one.
And if not, that's okay. I've got an option here.
Ooh, I've got one.
Okay.
This is kind of gross. But we'll do. How do you feel about? Now we're gonna go Patriots backfield versus Bills backfield.
So as a collective
backfield, PPR points.
Wow. Oh, okay. Oh, wow. That's interesting. Have we ever done an entire position group against each other before?
I don't think so.
Okay, I like it. I like it from that perspective. And I like that I don't have to try and pick one of these insufferable fools out to highlight.
Like, we get
them all.
You never know who's going to pop off for whichever team. So
it's awful. Also, love the use of pop off, bro. That is the best. I was just looking up the points allowed to the running back position for each teams, by the way. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you intended to do this. Just pretend you did, because it's a great stat. The Patriots and the Bills are back-to-back in terms of fantasy points allowed. Is literally 17.6 versus 17.4 fantasy points allowed.
Oh, nice.
They're both right in the middle of the list, so you don't even get an edge on that.
Wine Dustin is awesome.
Wine Dustin fucking knows. I'm gonna sadly, because I'm assuming you're not including the quarterbacks in this.
Yes? No. It's just the running backs.
Then in that case, I will take the Patriots backfield.
Okay.
Josh Allen was in play. That's a totally different vibe, of course. Then that's a smash for the Bills. But yeah, okay.
All right.
I like it. I feel good about it.
Well, I'm glad you feel good about it, because it's just gross either way you try to look at it.
I mean, it's not ideal. I kind of wish you had sexier names out there, but this is interesting and it's different than we've ever done before. So I appreciate it.
That's right. That's right. So, Jake, I'm going to have you take us out of here with the old outro stuff, since I'm on my phone because my computer's being dumb tonight. But yeah, folks, thanks for joining us. You can find Jake at Jake Trowbridge on Twitter. You can find our podcast at Drinking Fantasy. You can find me at FF Dusty Dog if you so choose to follow me. But follow our podcast and follow Jake because he's amazing. Enjoy the fantasy playoffs if you're in it. Embrace the chaos that is happening. We've only got a few weeks left of this, so enjoy it while you can. Till next week, folks, keep drinking and talking fantasy football.
Cheers, FFers.